So I love that you revisited this theory in Outliers as the mother of 3 young children, ages 9, 11, and 12. I read Outliers, and I'm one of those parents that got swept up in it. Couple of things in there. And I love that you take this hard look at it. Did I write a primer for neurotic middle-class helicopter parents? And then you make the point, stop the tyranny of birthdays. If you are somebody who has, quote, redshirted your child because he was born or she was born in the second half of the year, it may be because of this book. So I think it's hilarious that you went back and took this self-critical look at yourself and your theories. Good for you. Doesn't mean you were wrong, but you kind of think people may have taken it in the wrong way. Explain.
Yeah. So in Outliers, one of the arguments that I make is how much your birthday matters in terms of sports achievement and academic achievement. And there is no question. It's a huge issue. If you got a room full of 10-year-olds and one kid is born in January and one kid is born in December, the kid born in January has been around for 10%. Their life is 10% longer. That's huge. And when we look at evidence of things like, not just grades, but how likely are you as a kid to be diagnosed with a learning disorder or disciplined or suspended or, categorized with, painted with some kind of like dark brush. And what we find overwhelmingly is that kids who are relatively the youngest in their class are hugely proportionately overrepresented in those kind of categories and underrepresented in things like gifted and talented programs. And so it's clearly an issue. The question is, what should you do about it? And when I wrote my book, what I wanted was for schools to come up with thoughtful solutions to this problem, right? So you can imagine, for example, an elementary school might say, oh, if there's such a big difference between an 8-year-old born in January and one born in December, let's divide our classes by birth month. Let's have all the January, February, and March kids in one class and the April, May, and June kids in another class, and so on, right? That would be one thoughtful response. That's not what happened. What happened was parents just held their kids back if they were the relatively youngest in the class. That doesn't solve the problem. That just creates another class of kids who are suddenly at the bottom of the barrel, right? So it's like, I was like, this is not what I intended to happen. This was a cry for institutional change, right? I use the example of hockey, that if you look at hockey and lots of other sports, the older kids have this huge advantage and they end up being hugely overrepresented at kind of elite levels. The solution to that is for coaches and scouts and all to get smarter about adjusting for the fact that a relatively younger kid is going to look like he or she is not as talented when they're very young. And it's not about talent, it's about their age, right? We've got to get smarter about recognizing what talent is. We shouldn't just be holding everybody back, right? Which doesn't solve the problem. So I did this episode of my podcast, giving examples of ways to solve the problem, thoughtful ways of solving the problem, as opposed to just everyone leaving it on parents. We shouldn't be leaving this responsibility of giving your kid a fair chance to the parent, right? That's nuts. Design a system that's thoughtful and intelligent.
But here's a question for you, and I loved your episode today, but my question is, at what point do the kids catch up? Because if you say to the school, okay, my 8-year-old now, there's a big difference between him and the kid who was born 11 months earlier. I mean, doesn't that kid always have the advantage over my December baby? Or can you look at sports coaches and teachers and say, no, the data show by 11th grade, physically, all those advantages have evened out, and you should be thinking about him as a future tennis or baseball or football star right now, just one who's going to come to life for you a year later than the guys you're looking at now.
You're right. So eventually, of course, these initial differences even out. The problem is that we put in place systems which identify kids at a very young age. And so for example, imagine you have a gifted and talented program that you start in 5th grade. That gives the kids who are selected for it an advantage. So they're now getting better quality instruction, access to different curricula. They're surrounded by the smartest kids. They're getting the best teachers. So the other kids they never catch up. They may catch up physically and biologically, but the kids who had that early advantage are getting the additional advantage of an institutional boost, right?
The same is true in sports.
Right? You're on the travel squad at the age of 10, and all of a sudden you're playing twice as many games, better coaches, and you end up being better because of that early advantage. It's a real problem, Megyn. I don't mean to diminish it. It's a serious problem. It just requires more thoughtful, to be more thoughtfully addressed.
One of the things you point out is when we take these standardized tests on which so many schools base so many things, we don't account for birth date there either. So the third graders have to take the same test, in New York State or Connecticut, where I am now, what have you, even though they may be almost 12 months younger than the kids sitting next to them. And you were saying, what about having the kids who were born in September take the standardized test in September, and the kids who were born in January take it in January? Like, they don't do any of that. It's a good point.
Yeah, this is a guy. I was talking to this guy. So England is one of the countries that, at least in the area of sports, has thought about this problem most in the most kind of serious and profound way. So I was chatting with this English guy named Adam Kelly, who's deeply involved in trying to fix this problem in soccer, because he thinks he points out you leave a lot of talent on the table when you don't adjust for these age differences at an early level. There are all these kids who are the relatively youngest in their class. You think that they're slower and shorter and not as talented, and so they totally never get a chance to perform on the soccer field. Anyway, I'm chatting with this guy, and he just makes this point. It never occurred to me. He's like, why on earth do we make middle school kids take a standardized test all at the same time? Mm-hmm. That's crazy, right? Why would you that's 12-month advantage for an 11-year-old? That's nuts, right? Yeah. And the idea that it's 2022. We've been doing this for 100 years, and it has yet to occur to anyone that it's a bad idea, that it's impossible to accurately compare 11-year-olds, right? When some of them have a 12-month advantage over others. Right? We haven't adjusted for this problem. And I can't believe it's taken a century and we're still twiddling our thumbs about how to address it.
Bond Charge is a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. Founded on science and inspired by nature, all Bond Charge products adopt ancestral ways of living in our modern day world. From blue light glasses to red light therapy, to EMF management and circadian-friendly lighting, Bond Charge products help you naturally address the issues of our modern-day way of life effortlessly. Their glasses come in non-prescription, prescription, and reading options. Bond Charge also has other amazing products like low blue light bulbs, red light therapy devices, EMF 5G protection, and 100% blackout sleep masks, all backed by science. They can ship worldwide in rapid time. And most importantly, they have easy returns and exchanges. Go to bondcharge.com/MK and use coupon code MK to save 20%. That's BONCHARGE.com/MK and use that coupon code MK to save yourself 20%. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.